Imagine walking into a room full of people who spend their whole lives chasing applause, admiration, love, validation, hands stretched outward, begging the world to notice them. Everyone wants them, the shiny faces, the loud voices, the ones who sparkle just enough to distract from the emptiness underneath. But then there's you, quiet, overlooked, unpolished. A face the crowd doesn't bother to turn toward until suddenly they do. And when they finally do, it hits them like a slap in the dark that you were never trying to be wanted in the first place. People spend their entire lives chasing illusions, polished masks, and glittering distraction, believing that the brightest lights must lead to something real. They applaud the ones who shine because it saves them from looking too closely at their own fading reflection. And yet, the funny thing about illusions is how fragile they are. One touch, one honest stare, and suddenly the sparkle begins to flicker, the paint begins to peel, and the crowd starts wondering if the thing they admired was ever truly alive. Meanwhile, authenticity sits quietly in the corner, unbothered, unnoticed, untouched. It doesn't try to sing louder or pose harder. It simply exists, and that existence alone threatens everything the crowd thought they understood about wanting. They chase the illusions because the illusions never expose them, but they redrawn to authenticity because authenticity exposes everything they fear. There's a strange charm in someone who doesn't rehearse their expression, who doesn't paint on a smile just to fit into a room full of hungry eyes. The crowd isn't used to people like that. They're used to performers, those who twist themselves into pleasing shapes, those who juggle identities like flaming torches, terrified of dropping one and burning the whole act down. But someone real, someone raw, someone who doesn't care if the crowd applauds or walks away, becomes a magnet without trying. There's no show, no mask, no glitter, just truth. And truth, as uncomfortable as it is, pulls people in with a force they can't explain. Authenticity whispers while illusions scream, and somehow the whisper is louder, sharper, more unforgettable. You see, illusions are easy. They give people permission to look without truly seeing. They offer beauty without depth, smiles without sincerity, attention without connection. It's safe to want an illusion because it can never hurt you. It can't disappoint you, betray you, challenge you. But authenticity, that's dangerous. It holds up a mirror. It sees through the polite lies. It doesn't play along when the world pretends everything is fine. And people, whether they admit it or not, crave that danger. They crave something real enough to cut through the noise in their heads, something that doesn't shrink or bend just because someone else feels uncomfortable, something that refuses to become smaller when you're authentic. You don't run after the crowd. You don't ask for applause. You don't need to be chosen, and that alone unsettles people. They're used to being wanted, begged for, chased. They think desire should always announce itself loudly, should always bow, should always compete. But authenticity doesn't compete. It simply stands there steady and unapologetic. And the more it doesn't chase, the more the crowd feels a strange pull toward it, a curiosity, a confusion, a fascination. They wonder how someone can exist without needing their approval, and that question alone keeps them watching. Authenticity has edges, cracks, shadows, imperfections that make it human, unpredictable, alive. Illusions are too smooth, too polished, too safe. People say they want perfection, but perfection bores them. It doesn't challenge them. It doesn't provoke them. It doesn't make their hearts race or their minds spiral. What they truly want is the unpredictable spark of something genuine, something that refuses to be controlled or polished or softened, something that makes them feel something more than comfort. And even if they don't understand why, they move closer, drawn like moths to a flame. They can't explain. The crowd will pretend they prefer the shining illusion. They'll clap for them, chase them, decorate them with admiration. But when the spotlight dims and the noise fades, they look for the one quiet, honest presence that never danced for attention. They search for the one who didn't try to impress them, the one who stayed real, no matter how many illusions tried to overshadow it. Because in a world full of manufactured faces and practiced emotion, the rarest thing is someone who refuses to pretend, and with even trying, without even lifting a finger. Authenticity becomes the thing they want most, the thing they whisper about, the thing they watch from the corner of their eyes, hoping it doesn't disappear. Before they understand why they were drawn to it in the first place, people walk around with this desperate little itch under their skin, this constant need to be seen, praised, adored. They'll twist themselves into shapes that don't even resemble who they are, just to hear a tiny clap from someone who barely remembers their name. They'll laugh at jokes they don't find funny, pretend to be confident when they're shaken inside, wear masks that get heavier every day, because validation feels like oxygen to them. They can't breathe without it. They don't even know how to exist without someone else telling them they're enough. And the world? Oh, the world loves people like that. Easy to control, easy to impress, easy to break. But you, the moment you stop needing all that noise, the second you stop craving a round of applause from a crowd that's lost in its own insecurity, you become something they can't handle. There's a certain power in walking into a room and not caring whether a single head turns. Not because you're cold or arrogant, but because you've stopped handing out pieces of yourself like free samples. You don't bend when they expect you to bend. You don't shrink when the room gets loud. You don't adjust your soul so it fits neatly into their expectations. And that scares them. People who rely on validation can't understand someone who doesn't. They stare at you the way children stare at fire, not sure whether to warm their hands or run away. They mistake independence for danger, calm for arrogance, self-assurance for rebellion. But all you're doing is breathing without asking permission. When you don't need validation, you move differently. You speak without constantly replaying your words in your head, wondering whether they sounded clever enough or soft enough. You walk without rehearsing your posture, without wondering who's watching. You make choices based on what feels right, not what looks right. And the funny part, the moment you stop trying to impress anyone, they start paying attention. They lean in. They study you. They can't figure out how someone can stay so solid in a world that's constantly shaking. They can't understand how someone can be enough for themselves, especially when they've spent their whole lives being told they need others to define their worth. People who chase validation always chase harder when they realize someone isn't chasing them back. It's like a game they don't know how to play anymore. They expect people to compete for their approval, to fight for their attention. But when you don't swing at every bait, don't respond to every test, don't crave every little compliment, you throw their entire script out the window. Suddenly, they're the ones trying to win your approval, even if they don't admit it. They start watching your reactions a little too closely. They start wondering what makes you so unshakable. They start wanting the security you carry so effortlessly. This world teaches people to beg for attention. It teaches them to measure their value through screens, likes, followers, claps, nods, hollow words from hollow voices. They think being wanted is the same as being worthy. They confuse noise for meaning. But the truth is, the ones who don't beg for attention become the most interesting people in any room, not because they're trying to be mysterious, but because they refuse to be moved by the shallow currency of public approval. They don't need the world to clap before they believe in their own steps. They don't need someone else's spotlight when they've already found their own. Flame people addicted to validation melt the moment they stop receiving it. Their confidence evaporates. Their energy folds in on itself. But someone who doesn't need validation, someone who can stand alone without trembling, that person becomes almost untouchable. Criticism doesn't crush them. Praise doesn't blind them. Opinions don't steer them. They aren't tossed around by the shifting winds of public approval. And in a world filled with fragile egos, that kind of stability looks like power. Real power. The kind they can't imitate, no matter how many masks they put on, and sooner or later, they realize something. The person who doesn't need validation holds more influence than all the people begging for it combined, not because they shout the loudest, but because they don't shout at all. They don't ask to be seen. They don't beg to be understood. They simply exist with a weight and presence that makes others question their own wavering identity. And people, whether they admit it or not, are drawn to the ones who aren't afraid to stand alone. Most people don't realize there's a certain brilliance in being ignored. They panic when the world doesn't clap for them, when no one notices their efforts, when their name doesn't echo in every room. They take being overlooked as an insult, a wound, something that proves they're not enough. But that's only because they've never understood the strange power hidden in invisibility. When everyone's eyes are fixed on the loudest voices and the brightest costumes, they forget to look at the quiet figure standing in the corner. And that figure you gets to move freely, think clearly, grow silently, no expectation, no pressure. No rules chaining you to who they think you should be instead of who you're becoming. See, the ones soaked in attention, the ones constantly bathed in validation, they don't get to evolve. They perform, they maintain, they protect a reputation they never wanted but can't afford to lose. Their identity becomes a cage made of applause. They can't make mistakes, can't change direction, can't breathe without wondering who's watching. But the one who's overlooked, they get to make mistakes in peace. They get to experiment, to fail, to rise, to fall, to learn without every stumble turning into a public spectacle. While others are busy shining for the world, you sharpen yourself. In the shadows, being overlooked is like being handed the keys to a secret room. No one knows what you're building in there, what parts of yourself you're reinventing, what strengths you're developing when no one is paying attention. And people hate what they can't predict. The loud ones, the adored ones, they're predictable. Everyone sees their moves long before they make them. But someone overlooked, someone the world forgets to watch. That person can reshape their entire destiny right under everyone's nose. You can take routes nobody expects. You can build skills while the crowd is distracted by the next flashy thing. And when you finally step into the light, you don't arrive as the person they ignored. You arrive as someone they never saw coming. The funny part is, people confuse visibility with importance. They think if the world isn't clapping, they must not matter. But being unseen isn't the same as being unimportant. Sometimes it means you're the only one not caught in the circus. Sometimes it means you have the freedom the others lost. Sometimes it means you're the one writing the script, while everyone else fights for a role. The quiet ones are underestimated, and that's their greatest weapon. No one pays attention to your capabilities, your potential, your mind. They assume you're harmless. They assume you're average. They assume because you're not loud, you're not dangerous. They don't realize the most dangerous things in the world never announce themselves. People think the spotlight is the place where greatness is born. But the spotlight burns, it blinds, it exposes, it demands, it takes. And those who live under it forget who they are without it. But the shadows, that's where the most interesting transformations happen. That's where people discover their real voice, not the one shaped by applause, but the one forged by solitude. When you're overlooked, you're forced to rely on yourself. You learn to be your own motivation, your own critic, your own support. And that creates a strength the spotlight can never give. A strength that doesn't need witnesses to be real, and eventually, the same people who overlooked, you start noticing your steps, not because you asked them to, not because you performed for them, but because growth has a way of making noise even without trying. They'll start wondering when you became so confident, so capable, so sharp. They'll ask themselves how they missed it, how they failed to see what was right in front of them. They'll realize that while they were busy chasing attention, you were busy becoming someone worth paying attention to. The truth is, being overlooked hides your greatest advantage. No one sees your rise coming. No one prepares for you. No one stands in your way because they don't even know you're moving. And by the time they finally turn their heads, you're already standing where they never imagined you'd reached. People spend so much time trying to be seen that they forget how loud silence can be. They polish themselves, decorate themselves, advertise themselves. Also, someone might finally say, "Ah, there you are." They chase attention the way thirsty people chase water in a desert, hallucinating value in every glance. But something strange happens when you stop playing that game. When you stop stretching your neck toward every spotlight, stop raising your hand for every room, stop begging eyes to land on you. When you stop trying to be seen, that's when people start to really look. It's almost funny how the moment you stop performing, you start becoming visible in a way that unsettles the whole room. There's a kind of magic in someone who doesn't try too hard, someone who doesn't shove themselves forward, doesn't beg for recognition, doesn't contort their identity just to fit the mood of the crowd. People can smell desperation, they sense it like smoke in the air. But someone who stays calm, comfortable, self-contained, that person becomes a mystery, a puzzle, a presence that lingers without demanding anything. And the human mind hates an unanswered question. They start asking themselves, why isn't this one trying? Why aren't they chasing what everyone else is chasing? Curiosity grows teeth when it's denied attention, when you don't try to be seen. Every move you make becomes more deliberate. You start speaking only when you have something worth saying. You start moving only when you're sure of your direction. You stop giving energy to people who never deserved it in the first place. And that gives your presence weight, depth, gravity. While others scatter their worth like convey, you hold yours close. And humans, strangely enough, want most what they can't get easily. They ignore what's always available. They crave what doesn't beg for them. You become the quiet figure in the corner that somehow pulls every eye. Without lifting a finger, trying too hard turns people invisible. They work so desperately to be noticed that their efforts become predictable, exhausting, boring. The ones who shout for attention blend into the noise. But someone who stands still in a world that won't stop running, someone who doesn't perform, someone who is content in their own shadow, that person stands out without trying. The world can't overlook someone who doesn't need its approval. There's a freedom in that, a dangerous kind of freedom that whispers, I'm enough with or without you, and that whisper hits deeper than any scream for recognition you see. When you stop trying to be seen, you stop being shaped by the eyes of others. You stop living for applause. You stop bending toward opinions. You stop watering down your fire just to avoid making someone uncomfortable. You become more yourself than ever before, not a character in their story, but the author of your own. And authenticity real. Raw authenticity glows in a way no spotlight can replicate. People might not admit it, but it draws them in. It makes them curious. It makes them question themselves. They wonder why someone so comfortable in their own silence feels louder than the dozens shouting for attention around them. People want what feels stable, what feels confident, what feels untouched by insecurity. And nothing screams confidence louder than someone who isn't obsessed with being chosen, someone who's fine being in the background, someone who doesn't crumble at the idea of going unnoticed. The crowd expects people to scramble for visibility. They don't know how to react when someone doesn't. It disarms them. It fascinates them. It pulls them closer, even when you're not asking for closeness, and sooner or later, the truth reveals itself. When you stop chasing attention, you create space for real recognition, not the shallow kind that fades as soon as someone louder walks in, but the kind that's earned, not demanded, the kind that comes from being solid, not shiny, the kind that grows from the quiet, not the noise. People start noticing the things you never tried to show. The way you think, the way you move, the weight of your silence, the steadiness in your eyes. They realize you weren't hiding, you were simply not performing. And in a world addicted to performance, the one person who refuses to play becomes unforgettably. Wander into a room where half the crowd is screaming for attention, draped in bright colors and louder voices. The kind that demands to be seen, demands applause, demands validation like junkies chasing a first high. But you don't even glance at the stage lights. You're not broadcasting. You hold no banner. You're not performing. You're just breathing, standing still, watching. And there's something uncanny about that kind of silence. It doesn't shout, but it hums, quietly, steadily, a frequency that draws the ears of those who are tired of the noise. Confidence without attention doesn't beg for eyes. It steals glances. Those chasing forced charisma dress themselves in masks crafted from expectation. Smiles painted on with too bright lipstick, laughter measured by crowd reaction. Movement choreographed to earn approval. Their energy vibrates with desperation and longing. It's visible in the tremor when they laugh too loud, or the way they angle their shoulder just right for the light to catch the sparkle in their eyes. They're a performance, a well-practiced trick. The problem is tricks don't last. The paint cracks, the the laughter falters, and once the audience blinks, once their attention shifts, the illusion crumbles. Then you're left exposed, same person under the same mask, but with nothing left to hold the mask in place. Meanwhile, confidence that doesn't shout, real confidence, becomes magnetic. It doesn't rely on applause, because it's already applauding itself internally. It doesn't feed on attention, because it's fed by self-belief. It doesn't need validation, because it carries its own gravity. And when you walk into a room carrying gravity instead of glitter, people feel it. They don't understand it, they can't name it, but they sense it in the way you don't flinch. When the lights flicker, when the noise rises, when the pressure mounts, they notice that you don't shift, you don't bend, you don't sell yourself. Instead, everything else in the room bends toward you, because silence is unfamiliar, rare, and rarity tastes like power. When you're not begging to be wanted, when you're not leaning forward with expectation, when you're not pushing your value on others, that's when your value becomes earned, not given, rented, or borrowed from outside, but owned. You value yourself first. You set your own price. Others only pay for what's real, not what's packaged. They approach you not because you glare, not because you promise them light, but because you carry darkness they're afraid of, and light they don't expect. You don't need to scream to be heard. Your calm becomes their noise. Your stillness becomes their movement. In that quiet confidence lies chaos for the people chasing validation. They panic when you don't respond to their bait. They tighten their smiles, raise their voices, try to fill the empty space you leave for them to notice you. But you never dance. You keep walking, unmoved. And that wounds them more than silence ever could, because it reminds them nothing you offer requires a contract. Nothing you give demands a debt. And that freedom, that unchained truth, scares them. It unravels their carefully sewn masks. People mistake charisma for charm, for power. They see the loud ones, the flashy ones, the ones who demand attention, and they believe those are the winners. But power built on noise is fragile. It squawks, it wavers, it breaks when the song stops. Confidence without attention builds on something darker, something enduring. You shape it in solitude, you sharpen it in shadows, you temper it when nobody's watching. It becomes less about impressing others and more about honoring yourself. It doesn't depend on applause because it knows itself already. And the moment you stop reaching out with empty hands, the moment you stop offering parts of yourself like currency, the moment you hold yourself close instead of pushing yourself forward, that's when you start collecting real respect instead of fake smiles, real connection instead of hollow glances, real presence instead of borrowed attention, because people don't really want noise anymore. They're tired of the show. They want the thread that runs beneath the chaos. They want someone unshakable, someone unyielding, someone whose value doesn't flicker depending on who's watching. That kind of confidence, silent, steady, unconcerned. It doesn't announce itself. It simply exists, and existence under that kind of weight becomes louder than any scream. In the crowd, people think life is supposed to follow a script. They expect everyone to play along, smile at the right moments, nod at the right cues, shake hands, keep quiet, stay polite, behave. They punish anyone who steps outside the invisible lines. They cling to their little rules like children clutching crayons, terrified someone might color outside their precious outlines. But when you refuse to play by those rules, when you stop dancing to the rhythm they set, when you decide to walk your own crooked path instead of their straight one, that's when things get interesting. That's when people stop treating you like furniture and start watching you like a fire they can't control. Unpredictability is uncomfortable for them. It shakes up their sense of order, exposes their fragile illusion of control. They want everyone to move predictably, speak predictably, think predictably. They want people who can be read like cheap instruction manuals. But when you don't follow the default settings, when you don't smile just to make them comfortable, don't agree just to keep the peace, don't shrink just to fit in, you become something they can't categorize, something that doesn't fit neatly in their heads. And people fear what they can't categorize. They fear it, but they're drawn to it to see. A predictable person is easy to ignore. You always know what they'll say, what they'll do, how they'll react. They're simple. a walking pattern, a machine pretending to be human, but someone unpredictable, someone who doesn't bend to the pressure of the room. That person becomes magnetic. You never know what they'll say next, where they'll go next, how deeply they see the things others overlook. They're not bending toward the crowd, they're bending the crowd toward them, and people can't help but stare at the person who breaks the rhythm just by breathing differently. When you refuse to play by their rules, your presence becomes a disruption. Not loud, not violent, just undeniably different. You challenge the script without even speaking. You make them reconsider their own lines, their own roles, their own masks, and nothing terrifies people more than the idea that their mask might not be necessary, or worse, that yours was never needed in the first place. Because if you can exist without permission, without validation, without performing, then their entire reason for pretending starts to crumble. You accidentally expose their weakness by simply being yourself. People want control. They want to predict outcomes, reactions, consequences. It makes them feel safe. They think if they act the way they're expected to, they'll avoid chaos. But when someone walks into the room who isn't afraid of chaos, someone who is terrified of being different, they don't know where to place that person. You become the unexpected variable in their carefully balanced equation. You become the wild card they secretly wish they could be but are too scared to try. They watch you because you represent something they buried in themselves long ago, and here's the funny thing. The less predictable you are, the more predictable they become. They start leaning in, whispering about you, trying to figure out what makes you tick, what you're thinking, why you're not following their lead. They try to study you like a puzzle. But every time they think they've solved a piece, you shift again. Not because you're pretending, not because you're trying to confuse them, because you're living in a way that isn't chained to their expectation. And people aren't used to someone who isn't shackled by the need to be liked. People want to replicate everything they can understand. They mimic clothes, hairstyles, words, opinions, anything familiar becomes a template. But you don't give them a template. You don't offer them something easy to copy. And that uniqueness creates a tension in the air, a kind of electricity. You aren't following their map. You're drawing your own. And they want to know where that path leads, even if it terrifies them. They want to follow you without admitting they're curious. They want to understand you without admitting they admire you. And the truth is, unpredictability isn't about being reckless or chaotic. It's about refusing to shrink for anyone. It's about letting your mind wander where others are too afraid to step. It's about moving according to your own rhythm, not theirs. When you stop fitting into their neat little boxes, you stop being forgettable. You become the thing they turn their heads for, the thing they whisper about, the thing they can't categorize, control, or copy, and to them, that makes you dangerous. It makes you unforgettable. It makes you the spark in a room full of extinguished lights. That people love to believe they've got you all figured out. They glance at you once, maybe twice, and decide that you're harmless, quiet, ordinary. They build a neat little box and stuff you inside it without ever checking if you fit. They go about their lives convinced they see everything there is to see. But life has a way of tapping people on the shoulder when they least expect it. One day, the same ones who overlooked, you suddenly start noticing things they swear weren't there before. A new tone in your voice, a new steadiness in your walk, a light in your eyes they never bothered to look for, and it confuses them, rattles them, even irritates them a little, because nothing scares people more than realizing they were blind while someone was quietly sharpening themselves in the dark at first. They don't want to admit it. They tell themselves it's just a phase, a moment, a coincidence. They convince themselves you got lucky, or someone must have helped you, or it's just temporary, because accepting that you evolved without their approval, without their guidance, without their support, that feels like an insult to their pride. They want to believe they knew you. They want to believe they understood you. They want to believe you couldn't possibly grow beyond the version of you they constructed in their heads. But you did, and now they're forced to face the truth that they weren't paying attention while you were quietly reinventing yourself. You see, people don't like surprises unless they're the ones orchestrating them. But you became a surprise all on your own. No announcement, no performance, No slow build-up for dramatic effect. You simply changed. You grew where they didn't expect you to. You learned skills they didn't think you could. You built strength they never imagined you'd have. And when they finally turn around and see you standing differently, speaking differently, carrying yourself differently, they feel this strange mix of admiration and discomfort. Because part of them is impressed, and part of them is angry they didn't notice sooner. And they start replaying every moment they dismissed you. Every time they underestimated you, every time they ignored your potential. They remember the times they talked over you, rushed past you, laughed at you, doubted you, and suddenly, those memories don't feel so harmless anymore. Suddenly they realize they made a mistake, a big one. They realize you weren't the background character they thought you were. You were never meant to stay in the shadows. You were observing them, learning from them, understanding them. World, they wasted time trying to shine for everyone. People assume those who stay quiet are weak. They assume silence means fear or confusion or uncertainty. But sometimes silence is just strategy. Sometimes silence is studying. Sometimes silence is choosing not to waste your voice on people who won't hear it. And when those same people finally notice your strength, it shocks them because they never saw the work behind it. They only see the result. They see the confidence you built while they weren't looking. They see the clarity you developed while they were distracted. They see the power you earned while they were showing off. And now, the dynamic changes. They start looking at you differently, watching more closely, listening more carefully. They measure their words around you. They double-check their assumptions. They tilt their heads, trying to understand how you escaped the version of you they trapped in their minds. They realize you're no longer predictable, no longer small, no longer the easy-to-ignore presence they once thought you were. You've become something else, something they don't quite know how to approach. It's strange how the human mind works. They always want what they don't understand. They crave what slips out of their grasp. And once you've grown beyond their expectations, once you've become something sharp, deeper, more self-assured than the version they imagined, they start wanting you, wanting your attention, your presence, your approval. They want to figure you out now that they realize they never did. They want to be close to the strength they almost missed. They want to understand the glow that wasn't there before, or maybe it was, and they were simply too blind to see it. They ignored you when you were quiet. They dismissed you when you were still. But now that you move with your own gravity, now that you walk without seeking their eyes, now that you stand with a spine they didn't know you had, they can't help but turn their heads. They can't help but wonder how they missed you. They can't help but realize they were too busy chasing noise to notice the one person who was destined to echo louder than all of them without even raising their voice. You ever notice how some people walk around acting like the whole world is out to get them? Like life just refuses to hand them a break? They pray, they hope, they wait, and nothing changes. And then they start pointing fingers at the world, at people, at God. But here's the real joke. Sometimes the thing keeping the door locked isn't on the outside. Sometimes it's something they're doing. Let's talk about pride. That little whisper in your ear that says, you don't need anyone. You've got it all figured out. But here's the fun part. Pride is like wearing a blindfold in a room full of open doors. You stumble, you trip, you hit your head, and yet you swear you're walking just fine. Because of course, you know best, right? Pride is funny like that. It convinces you that help is for the weak, that admitting you don't know something is a flaw, that listening to someone else is a waste of time. And so, you sit there, stuck in a situation that could have been solved in an instant, if only you weren't so sure of yourself. People come along, they offer advice, they extend a hand, and what do? You slap it away. I got this, you say, gritting your teeth, dragging yourself through the mud while pretending you're strolling through a garden. And blessings? Oh, they come knocking, but pride doesn't answer the door. No, no, no. Pride crosses its arms, turns up its nose, and says, I'll get there on my own. But let me tell you something. There's no medal for struggling alone. There's no trophy for suffering just to prove a point. And the best part? The very people you refuse to listen to, the very ones you look down on, might just be the ones carrying the key to that locked door you've been banging on for years. But you don't see that, because pride makes you look in the mirror and see a king when really you're just another fool refusing to ask for directions. And here's the trick. It disguises itself as confidence. It pats you on the back, tells you you're strong, tells you that leaning on someone else is a sign of weakness, but in reality, it's the exact opposite. The strongest people, the smartest ones, the ones who actually get somewhere, they know when to listen. They know when to ask for help. They know that holding on to pride is like holding on to a burning rope and pretending it doesn't hurt. And oh, the irony. You pray for answers, for guidance, for something big, and it comes, but not in the way you expect. It comes through people, through opportunities, through lessons disguised as inconveniences. But you turn up your nose, you roll your eyes, you say, that's not what I asked for. And just like that, another blessing slips through your fingers, another door closes, another opportunity wasted, all because you thought you knew better. The best tricks are the ones you don't see coming, and pride, it's been playing you from the start. Ah, greed, that little itch that never quite goes away no matter how much you scratch. The more you feed it, the hungrier it gets. You think you have enough, but then, ooh, look, someone else has more. And suddenly, what you have isn't good enough anymore. It's funny, isn't it? How the moment you get what you once prayed for, you start eyeing something bigger, something shinier, something just out of reach. Greed isn't just about money, no. That's the part people like to focus on because it's easy to see. But the real fun, the real magic trick, greed shows up everywhere. Attention, love, power. You ever notice how some people can never get enough of being liked? They collect compliments like trophies, but the moment they stop coming, oh, they start feeling empty. Or the ones who crave control, who grip everything so tightly that they don't even realize they're suffocating it. That's greed too. That desperate need for more, even when you already have plenty. Oh, and here's where it gets good. Greed blinds you. It makes you chase things that don't even matter. It makes you sacrifice real joy for illusions of happiness. You ever see someone obsessed with climbing the ladder, working their fingers to the bone, chasing numbers, chasing status? And for what? To sit at the top and realize, oh no, the feeling still isn't enough? That's the joke, the grand illusion, because greed doesn't let you win. It just moves the finish line further and further away. And blessings? Oh, they come, all right. But greed whispers, not enough, not yet. Keep going. You could have a feast in front of you and all you'd see is an empty plate. You could have love wrapped around you like a warm coat and yet you'd still be shivering, begging for more. The saddest part? You might not even notice. You might just call it ambition. You might tell yourself you're just driven, just focused, just working towards something greater. But deep down, that little voice inside you, the one you try to ignore, it knows the truth. Greed makes you take and take until there's nothing left. It makes you hoard things you don't need. Ever meet someone who can't share, not because they don't have enough, but because they think if they give a little, they'll somehow lose everything? That's greed's little game. It makes you afraid to give, afraid to lose, afraid to be content, because contentment means the chase is over. And then what? You'd have to actually sit with yourself, sit with what you have, and oh, that's a scary thought. You pray for more, thinking more will fix you. You pray for bigger, thinking bigger will make you feel whole. But what if the real blessing isn't in getting more? What if the real blessing is learning how to appreciate what you already have? Now, wouldn't that be something? Ah, envy, that little green monster that slithers into your mind when you see someone else winning. It whispers in your ear, making you question everything. Why them? Why not me? You smile, you nod, you clap for their success, but inside, oh, inside it burns, doesn't it? It scratches at the back of your skull, making you feel like you've been cheated, like the universe is playing favorites, like someone took what was supposed to be yours. Funny thing about envy, it never shows up dressed as itself. No, it's much smarter than that. It sneaks in wearing disguises. Maybe it calls itself motivation, makes you think you're just pushing yourself harder. Or maybe it pretends to be justice, makes you feel like the world is unfair, and you're just pointing it out. It makes you bitter, makes you pick apart other people's victories, searching for cracks, for reasons why they didn't deserve it. Oh, they got lucky, they had connections, it's not even that impressive. Anything to soothe the sting. And here's the real joke. Envy doesn't take anything from them, it just rots you. It eats away at your joy, makes you blind to your own blessings. You could have everything you once prayed for, but if someone else has something a little shinier, a little bigger, suddenly what you have feels worthless. It could be the car, the job, the house, the relationship. Doesn't matter. Envy turns it all gray, like a disease that spreads, poisoning everything it touches. And oh, it makes you do stupid things. You ever see someone sabotage themselves because they were too busy watching someone else? Ever see someone burn their own house down just because their neighbor's was bigger? That's envy's little trick. It makes you compete in a race you never even wanted to run. It makes you chase things you don't even care about just because someone else has them. It makes you forget who you are, what you want. It makes you waste time, energy, years, all trying to prove what exactly? That you're just as good? That you can win? But win what? That's the punchline. Because there is no finish line. You could get everything you envy and you'd still feel empty. You'd still find someone else to compare yourself to. It never stops. That's the real prison. That's the real nightmare. And the best part? It's all in your own head. You lock yourself in, throw away the key, and then blame the world for your misery. Oh, and the people you envy? Half of them don't even have what you think they do. The happy couple that makes you feel alone? They might be miserable behind closed doors. The successful entrepreneur that makes you feel small? They might be drowning in stress, faking their confidence just like everyone else. But envy doesn't care about the truth. It only cares about the illusion. It makes you believe in ghosts, makes you chase shadows, makes you obsessed with a version of reality that doesn't even exist. So tell me, what's the point? You waste your energy staring at someone else's plate while your own food goes cold. You let your own gifts collect dust because you're too busy watching someone else unwrap theirs. You miss your own blessings because you're too busy counting someone else's. And for what? To sit there miserable, bitter, hollow? To let that little green monster control you, turn you into something you're not. It's funny, really. Tragic, but funny. And the best part? It's all self-inflicted. People love to talk about how they're waiting for the right moment, waiting for the perfect time to start, waiting for the stars to align, for the universe to give them a sign, for the fear to disappear. But here's the joke. There is no right moment. There is no magic hour where everything suddenly makes sense, where all the fear vanishes and you feel ready. That moment, it's an illusion, a fantasy, a bedtime story people tell themselves to justify their inaction, because it's easier to wait than it is to move. Oh, and let's not forget the excuses. People are masters at excuses. I'm too young, I'm too old, I don't have enough experience, I need to learn more first. What if I fail? What will people think? What if I'm not good enough? The list goes on and on and on. It's always something, always a reason to stay exactly where they are. But the truth is, they're not waiting for the right moment. They're waiting for the fear to go away. They think that once they feel confident, once they have a guarantee of success, then they'll act. But confidence doesn't come first. Action does. Funny how that works. People sit in the dark, scared to move, scared to take a step, but the only way out is to move anyway. To stumble forward, to embrace the uncertainty, the discomfort, the risk. That's where confidence comes from. Not from thinking, not from planning, but from doing, from falling on your face, getting up and realizing you survived. But no one wants to hear that. They want a shortcut. They want a guarantee. They want someone to hold their hand and tell them everything will be okay before they even begin. And that's why most people never start. They let time slip through their fingers, waiting for a feeling that never comes. They watch other people move forward and tell themselves they must be different. They must have had an advantage. They must have had it easier. No, they just moved. They felt the fear and moved anyway. While you were waiting, they were acting. While you were hesitating, they were failing and learning and trying again. And now they're ahead, and you're still sitting there, convincing yourself that one day you'll be ready. But one day never comes. There is no magical tomorrow where you wake up fearless, fully prepared, and completely certain. It doesn't exist. You don't become ready. You make yourself ready. You start before you feel prepared. You move before you have all the answers. And yes, you will stumble. Yes, you will make mistakes. Yes, it will be uncomfortable, awkward, even painful. But that's the cost of getting somewhere. That's the price of escaping the cage you built for yourself. And oh, how people love their cages. They decorate them, make them cozy, tell themselves it's better this way, safer, no risk, no rejection, no failure. But also, no growth, no success, no life, just existing, just watching time pass, just waiting for something that isn't coming. And that's the real tragedy, isn't it? Not failure, not mistakes, not rejection, no. The real tragedy is never trying at all. The real tragedy is looking back one day and realizing you wasted your time waiting for the right moment. But go ahead, keep waiting. Keep telling yourself that tomorrow, next week, next year, then you'll be ready. Keep watching others take the chances you were too scared to take. Keep making excuses, keep letting fear run the show. Or you could do something different. You could stop waiting, you could start now. Not tomorrow, not when it feels right, now. Because if you don't, well, we both know how this story ends. It's funny, isn't it? The way people pray for a blessing with one hand while holding onto a curse with the other. They sit there, eyes closed, lips moving, whispering into the void, hoping for some grand miracle. But the moment something good tries to come their way, they block it, push it away, lock the doors and throw away the key. And then they wonder why nothing ever changes. Why life keeps circling the drain like a bad joke with no punchline. People don't realize how much they stand in their own way. Oh, they'll blame everything else, the world, their past, bad luck, even the weather, but never themselves, never the habits they refuse to let go of, because that would mean admitting they're the problem, and people, they don't like that. They'd rather stay miserable than face the truth. They'd rather cling to the poison than swallow the antidote. They call it faith, they say they believe, but belief without action is just a bedtime story. They keep repeating the same patterns, making the same choices, walking into the same traps, and they wonder why nothing ever changes, like a broken record playing the same sad tune. Over and over again they ask for blessings, but refuse to make space for them, like trying to fill a cup that's already overflowing, with bitterness, with pride, with fear. And they wonder why it never gets full. Oh, but let's talk about that pride, shall we? That stubborn little voice inside that says, I don't need to change. I don't need to do anything differently. That voice that whispers, it's not me, it's them. The world is full of people who would rather be right than be happy, who would rather hold on to their ego than open their hands to receive something better. Pride is a funny thing. It's like standing in a burning house but refusing to leave because you built it, watching the flames crawl up the walls and thinking, I'd rather burn than admit I made a mistake. Then there's fear. That nasty little shadow that follows people everywhere they go. The thing that keeps them stuck, keeps them small, makes them hesitate when they should leap. They pray for doors to open, but when one does, they stand there staring at it, too afraid to step through. What if it's the wrong door? What if there's something worse on the other side? What if? And just like that, the door closes. Another opportunity lost. Another blessing wasted. And all because they were too afraid to take a risk. But here's the real kicker. People don't even recognize how much they sabotage themselves. They call it being cautious. They call it waiting for a sign. But how many signs do they need? How many times does the universe have to scream in their face before they listen? They want a blessing, but they won't let go of the baggage. They want change, but they won't change. They want a new life, but they refuse to bury the old one. And let's not forget resentment. Oh, that's a big one. Walking around with a heart full of grudges, expecting to receive love, holding on to past wounds like trophies, wondering why nothing good ever lasts. You can't receive with closed fists. You can't move forward while dragging the weight of yesterday behind you. But try telling people that. They'd rather be bitter than free. They'd rather hold on to the pain because it's familiar, because at least it's theirs. And then there's the lack of gratitude. Oh, they want more, always more. But do they ever stop to appreciate what they already have? Do they ever take a second to acknowledge the blessings already in their hands? No. They focus on what's missing, what they don't have, what they think they deserve. And so, no matter how much they receive, it's never enough. They keep their eyes on the horizon, chasing something that never comes, because they never learned how to be thankful for what's right in front of them. So they sit there, waiting, wondering why life feels empty, why every door seems locked, why nothing ever goes their way. They think they're being tested. They think the world is against them. But the truth is they are their own biggest obstacle, their own worst enemy. They don't need a miracle. They need to get out of their own way. Ah, doubt. That little voice whispering in the back of your head, poking at you when no one's around. Funny thing about doubt, it doesn't come screaming through the front door. No, no, no. It slips in through the cracks, quiet, subtle, like a shadow you don't even notice until it's wrapped itself around your mind. And once it's there, oh, it makes itself at home. It sits you down, pours you a drink, and starts planting little ideas in your head. What if you're not good enough? What if you're wasting your time? What if this was never meant for you? And the best part, you believe it. Because doubt's got this little trick. It doesn't sound like an enemy, it sounds like you, your own voice, feeding you poison one drop at a time, makes you think you're being logical, makes you think you're just being cautious, makes you think you're protecting yourself from failure, when really, you're just keeping yourself locked in a cage you built with your own hands. You ever notice how doubt always shows up right when you're about to step into something bigger? Right when the opportunity finally comes knocking? Oh, doubt loves those moments. It loves to slip in right when you're at the edge, right when you're about to jump. Because doubt doesn't care about your dreams. Doubt's only job is to keep you small, to keep you safe, to make sure you never find out what's on the other side of that leap. And you listen. You sit there arguing with yourself, going back and forth in your own head until you talk yourself out of what was meant for you. And life just watches. Because the opportunity was right there. The blessing was right there. The door was wide open, but you let doubt close it. You locked yourself out before you even tried. And the real tragedy? You'll never know what was waiting on the other side. Doubt is a slow poison. It doesn't kill you all at once, no. It kills you little by little. Every time you hesitate, every time you shrink back, every time you let fear drive the car while you sit quietly in the passenger seat, it kills your confidence. It kills your momentum. It kills the version of you that was supposed to rise. People think doubt is just a feeling, something that comes and goes. But doubt is a habit. You feed it every time you second guess yourself. Every time you play small to avoid looking foolish. Every time you walk away from an opportunity because you're not sure how it's going to turn out. And the more you feed it, the stronger it gets. Until one day, doubt doesn't even have to whisper anymore. It's the only voice you hear. The cruelest part of it all? Doubt doesn't even have to be right. It just has to be loud. It doesn't need proof. It doesn't need facts. It just needs you to believe in it more than you believe in yourself. Oh, but here's where the joke really lands. Doubt never shows up when you're playing it safe. Never shows up when you're hiding in the shadows. Never shows up when you're living below your potential. No, doubt only shows up when you're on the verge of something big. It's the final test, the invisible wall between who you are now and who you could become. And most people, they never make it past that wall. They let doubt talk them out of their destiny without ever realizing that if doubt's showing up, it means the breakthrough is closer than ever. But doubt doesn't fight fair. It doesn't hit you all at once. It chips away at you little by little, day by day, until the version of you that once believed in something better is just a ghost. And then you're left with regret, because deep down you knew you were capable of more. You knew you were made for more. But you let that little voice bury it before it ever had the chance to live. The ones who break through, the ones who actually step into what's meant for them, it's not because they never feel doubt. It's because they stopped listening. They learned how to hear the whispers and keep moving anyway. They understood that doubt is just fear wearing a mask, trying to convince you to stay small. And once you see through the mask, once you realize that doubt is just a test, that's when everything starts to shift.